Hello, friends. If you have been feeling overwhelmed, scattered, or at times just completely disconnected from yourself, this episode is for you. Today, I cannot wait to share with you some of the ideas I've been formulating about how we as busy moms in midlife can find the reset ritual that we really need to be able to stop the noise and be able to connect inward in a more supported and effective way. And a huge priority for me when creating any offerings, any supports is that it doesn't, number one, represent a huge amount of time. Number two, isn't something that requires a ton of discipline or just feels like it's another thing on your to-do list. And then number three, it's grounded in solid mental health, emotional well-being, and kind of a mind-body approach principle. And today, the reset ritual I'm going to offer you actually starts with something a little bit unexpected, and it is a sunflower. I know, a little bit weird and wacky, just stick with me. As women, we actually have a lot to learn from sunflowers. They have something to teach us about finding ourselves. The thing is that the way that sunflowers are designed is that they will automatically track light across the sky. They orient themselves to face the sun. When I think about culture and modern life as an adult in this world, it is all pulling us outward. It's asking for our attention and our energy to continually be moving outward toward productivity, approval, accomplishment, or especially as women, we're conditioned to always want to be attractive to other people. So all of our orientation is outward. And the reset ritual reframe I want to offer all busy moms is that what if the reset that you need is actually about turning inward toward your own inner light? What do I mean by that inner light? I actually mean a lot of things, but since this is a short podcast, I'll just be brief. But I think that within each of us is like an essential self. It's like our deepest, most authentic self. And that version of ourselves is a great way to get a deeper understanding of what matters most to us, what is most deeply important, and what we most want to experience and create in our lifetime. Inner light also is like a way to think about the most rich and vital information that we have within ourselves. It helps us to be in a better relationship with ourselves. It helps us to tap into and access a sustaining source of love from the inside. And it's that inner light, that inner love that we want to return to so that we can offer the best of ourselves to the people and the processes and to the world around us. So take a moment and check in with yourself. When was the last time that you actually just checked in on a regular, ordinary day with what you really wanted, felt, thought, or needed in the moment? And I'm talking about deeper than like, what do I need to do? What's next on my to-do list? What's next in front of me? Not about kind of an outer oriented to what you needed to attend to on the outside. But when was the last time you just took a little pause and checked in with yourself, simply but intentionally on the inside? Now, I think this actual practice of pausing and turning ourselves like sunflowering inward to listen is harder than most people think. And I think that's for two reasons. The first reason, which I'm not going to go into today, but it is a significant reason, is I think that when many of us turn inward, the volume on our inner world, like our thoughts, feelings, our emotional world, that volume turns up. And sometimes that can be overwhelming or uncomfortable, and we don't know what to do with that experience. And so it's easier just to keep that volume turned down and not really pay attention as much to this like deeper information on the inside. In the Vibrant Mom Collective, I introduce a whole framework how midlife women can work with their inner worlds and just skyrocket their emotional health and well-being. And over the course of time on the podcast, I'll share as many nuggets with you as I can around that framework. But for today, I think a key reason why it can be so hard to turn toward your own inner light is because of how noisy modern life is. So there are these external sources of noise, like current events, the never-ending to-do list, all of the work demands, the parenting challenges in front of you, all the adulting things that we have to do. It's all really noisy and demanding and distracting, and it really requires a lot of our time and attention. There's also internal sources of noise that distract us from this inner light, like self-doubt, self-consciousness, shame, anxiety, internal expectations and worry. All of that internal pressure can get quite noisy at times. So whether it's external noise or internal noise, it can be really hard to practice the art of listening on the inside and turning that sunflower of your attention toward your own inner knowing and to be able to cut through the noise and listen more deeply within. So over the past, 5 or 6 years, after I survived the kind of like toddler tantruming phase with my son, I started to develop a reset ritual for myself. And now it's one that I share with all women I get the honor of working with, either in a counseling or in a mentoring capacity. And this reset ritual is a 2-part practice. The first part is like a time out, or I call it eddying out. So I want you to think of your life being like a river current. There is this like flow of water. There's this flow of information and experiences that happen in a continual way. And some aspects of that river, just like all rivers, are dynamic and a little splashy, maybe a little bit fun, or maybe even a little bit scary and intense. And some aspects of the river is a little more slow paced and soft and steady. But regardless, the water keeps flowing and it keeps moving. And over again, there will be tricky technical parts, splashy, wavy parts, and then slow moving, flowing parts. And the trick to living and navigating through this river isn't to try to control the river or control the water or try to change what's happening in the river, but rather to learn how to navigate the river with skill. And one way of doing that is to do something called eddying out. So right alongside fast moving and actually slow moving as well, but especially that fast moving current are these pockets of slow moving, recirculating water called eddies. And so skilled boatsmen or boatswomen know how to, while they're in the flow of the river, whatever the dynamism that that river is bringing forward, they can learn how to look to the right or to the left of the main channel of the river to look for these slow moving pockets, these eddies of water, and then they can navigate their boat or their raft into these eddies, and then the boat will just stay still, recirculating in this eddy while the main current kind of charges and flows ahead. So life is like a river. It's fast moving, it's demanding, it's relentless. And that eddy is the still pocket of water on the side where you're able to catch your breath, where you're able to get information from within the boat, like what the boat's person or the boat people need in order to do that next section of the rapid or the river skillfully. You can get information about what's ahead on the river and kind of read the water to chart your course. And stepping outside of the metaphor into just practical day-to-day life, this is a daily pause, eddying out or taking what I'm going to call just a time out is choosing to create a crucial space just to the side of the flow of your day to pause, to get a little bit of space from everything pulling from your attention. And it's like a permission slip to take a moment, create a little space outside of the flow of your life just for yourself. We can do this time out principle either just preventatively, because we know that we'll be a better human if we find one or two or more if you've got the ability, but one or two predictable or intentional times in your day to just take a time out from the flow of demands of your life to check in with yourself, to do something to slow the pace of life and to connect more deeply within, to turn yourself towards your inner light, to invest in this timeout strategy as a way to protect your mental health, your emotional health, and refill the energy from the inside. Or you can use a timeout principle kind of proactively. So preventative, because you know it just helps people to feel well and be well in their lives, or proactive when you feel like you're a tantruming toddler on the inside. You're struggling with something, you're in pain, you're feeling pressured, you're feeling depleted, you're feeling overwhelmed or overrun by whatever is going on in that external world. And on the inside, you're struggling. We can use a time out to attend and care for ourselves. And the reason why this reset ritual has two parts, the first part is a time out. And then the second part is called time in. And the reason why I created this second part is because I think most women, when we actually do choose to pause and stop and, step outside and go on a quick walk, or go sit down in hopefully a private place, or just take 5 minutes in our car before going into work or going into pickup. When most women have a moment of time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes of time to themselves, it can get a little overwhelming to know what to do. And what I find most people do is they fill that space with something enjoyable and pleasurable, but maybe not as deeply orienting and fulfilling and rewarding. So they'll fill the space with scrolling, going to social media just to get an infusion of inspiration or enjoyment or a little dopamine hit. Again, not wrong to do any of these things, but they may not bring that deeper reset that we're most needing. But we'll fill the space with scrolling. We'll fill the space with consuming information like podcasts and learning. We'll fill the space with calling someone or connecting. Again, all of these things on their own, not bad. Actually could be really enjoyable, good things to do. But what we really need for a deeper reset is an understanding of what time in could actually look like, because all of those things don't help us to listen to ourselves on the inside. They're enjoyable, they're comforting, but they don't represent turning inward and cutting through the noise. It just ends up being a little bit more enjoyable, more helpful, but just still noise. And we need to stop the noise. We need to turn the volume down on the noise and learn how to connect and do time in. Time in activities from like a neuroscience perspective are activities that help us to reflect on sensations, feelings, thoughts, helping to start integrate our brains and who we are. We're checking in with ourselves and providing some grounding and soothing for ourselves. Kind of like the parenting principle that I learned from parenting expert Tina Payne Bryson. Rather than giving kids a time out when they're having a hard time, which would just say, you're having a hard time, your behavior isn't appropriate, go away until you, just on your own, I guess as a child, figure things out and then come back to me when you're more regulated. The time in principle rather asks us to move toward our child, to forge a loving connection with them, being in their zone, depending on their temperament, talking, comforting, helping them to calm down by the quality of our presence, and then teaching them how to pause and reflect on their behavior. So we're using time in a connection and a relational quality, not isolation. to smooth over those difficult behavior bumps with our kids. And I'm always thinking, as a provider and an educator for adult women, how we can do those same things for ourselves on the inside. So as women, we need to be given practices that help us to do the time in thing so that we're not scrolling, zoning out, powering through, filling the space with endless learning and consuming more information. Time in practices help us turn toward ourselves with curiosity and compassion, like a loving parent sitting with a struggling child. They help us to observe our inner worlds, to become more spacious on the inside, to be with whatever is there. That does require us to practice some emotional fluency skills, but also to practice enjoying the simple act of being with our own presence, to become familiar with just sitting simply and being with ourselves again, taking a moment to befriend ourselves, to connect within, to get information from the inside that helps us decide not necessarily what we're going to do next, but how we want to be in whatever is next in our day. The clarity we're looking for in a time in practice is clarity on how to be with ourselves, and then maybe how to show up to whatever the circumstances or the people are that are next in the flow of our lives, how we can show up in a way that we're proud of, and how we hope will be most effective given whatever circumstances we're in. So the cumulative effect of this time out for time in principle is that you start to know yourself again. And that inner knowing and that listening and that experimenting moving forward helps us to develop a deeper trust on the inside, less reactive around our emotional experiences, better able to navigate stressors with some skill, and to tap into something deeper and more fulfilling so that our lives don't just like rush and race past. So that external pressure, that external noise doesn't disappear, but we can stop letting it run the show. And instead, we can turn inward, learn how to make more space for any internal noise we have, better capacity to move through it skillfully, and then be able to listen to something deeper from within, that inner light, that inner message of love and goodness, and the deeper longings and desires we have for ourselves and for our people and for whatever we're doing in our work in the world. And I think that it can be really helpful to have guided practices that are time in tools that help us to stay with our attention in the time in moment. It can be really difficult having a full volume morning, getting your family out the door, a full volume, probably work day with a lot of demands and a lot of to-dos. It can be really difficult, first of all, just to take the time out, but then second of all, it can be really hard to get our minds to focus on the inside. It can be helpful to have a guided practice, something that kind of roots us and anchors us. It's like a help for the brain to know how to attend within. In the Vibrant Mom Collective, I'm continually creating time and tools that help moms to access these deeper, more fulfilled interior spaces. And I'd love to share a few with you. I'm creating a free Vibrant Mom toolkit to offer all of my podcast listeners. It's almost ready, but in this podcast episode on my blog, I'll make sure that there is a downloadable time in practice just for you. I'm going to drop you a non-sleep deep rest practice and my favorite resetting breath practice. These two tools can really help you to take that time out, cut through the noise, and then practice a more skillful time in experience. These practices that I'm going to gift you, they'll be linked on my blog, especially around this podcast episode, are 10 minutes or less, designed just for you in this busy, full-on season of life, helping you slow down internally and come into a more full-hearted, sunflower-oriented to your inner light experience. Every time you turn inward, you're choosing yourself. This is not indulgent. This is not selfish. This is how you stop the noise and how you return to yourself, so that the self you return outward toward other people, toward the loved ones in your life, is one that you can be deeply proud of and most aligned with what truly matters to you. I hope you'll download both time in tools and practice them both. And then let me know, reach out to me. I love to hear from you. Which one did you like the best? Thank you for listening. And I'm wishing you well in this sunflowering era of your life.